lot of people, I got into Magic, I think, primarily for the art and for the fun idea of summoning creatures from the other planes to throw at my enemies. And one of the things that kept me from getting into it for a very long time is the fact that everyone who plays has been playing for 10 years, and they all overthink it, and they all have these really intense in-game strategies. And no one really wanted to just play it to have fun. So I'm going to try and fix that. I'm going to be showing you a couple decks based on some fun metagame concepts. These aren't your standard, control archetype decks or anything like that. In fact, the first deck we're doing is going to be based on amusement park haunted houses. It's just close enough to Halloween that I can still pretend this is kind of a Halloween episode. So right before Halloween, I got to go visit some really awesome amusement park haunted houses. As I was thinking about what made them scary and fun and what made me like them so much, I realized that with the right mechanics, you can probably build a magic deck that simulates the experience of walking through an amusement park haunted house for your opponent. Now, the keys to this deck are Flash and Instant. Instant you should be familiar with even a passing familiarity with magic. Flash, however, is a creature ability that lets you play creatures as if they were instant. So, for instance, this Ash Code Bear has Flash, which means that I can summon him anytime I would summon an instant, whether it's on my turn or on my opponent's turn, and that's part of the trick. Ideally, when playing this deck, you are playing most, if not all, of your creatures and spells on your opponent's turn. Your turn is just for playing lands. It basically means that you're going to look like you have nothing out, wait for your opponent to declare an attacker, and then flash summon a creature to block that attacker. In theory, providing a sort of jump scare. Now, the way I play this deck is green and black. I like green because green is the color that has the most creatures with Flash. A card I think works exceedingly well for this theme is a card like Ambush Viper, which has both Flash and Death Touch. Death Touch means that any damage this creature does to another creature will kill it. So that means that if an opponent declares an attacker, I can Flash summon this and block with it, and then immediately kill it because I'm doing 2 damage to it. Now, there are a couple other green cards with Flash, but I think that if you want some more flexibility, what would be nice to throw in there is a card like Yiva Nature's Herald, which not only has Flash, but allows you to treat all of your green creatures as if they had Flash. And that opens up some interesting doors for you. For instance, you can now summon Green's suite of incredibly powerful creatures, like Charging Rhino, as if they had Flash. Now imagine the surprise of your opponent when he declares an attacker, not knowing that you have a Charging Rhino in his hand, and then you Flash summon it using Yiva Nature's Herald, and now all of a sudden you got a 4/4 on your side of the field that he did not know about. I also like the idea of using Yiva Nature's Herald with a card like Hornet's Nest. Now, Hornet's Nest is nice because when your opponent does damage to it, you get to take that much damage and turn it into 1/1 insect creatures with flying and death touch. And the nice thing is all damage done to this counts, not just up to the lethal limit. So if your opponent is playing something huge like a 7/7 and he attacks you and you flash and block with this, you have 7 1/1 insects on the field with death touch. I'm going to start talking about instants with an idea for a kind of combo with Hornet's Nest. This is kind of a parenthetical. Hornet's Nest is not required to make this deck work. I like using Titanic Growth. Now, Titanic Growth is nice because it adds 4/4 to any creature that you have instantly. Or if you're late in the game and you have the mana for it, you can even Flash summon and then add a Titanic Growth. Now your opponent's got this giant new creature to do. It's a really good card for keeping on his toes. And it also works really nice because you can actually cast this on one of your opponent's creatures as it's attacking Hornet's Nest to add 4 extra Wasp tokens with Death Touch. And now we get to the instants. One that I like is Beast Attack, which lets you put a 4/4 Beast token onto the field, basically summoned via Flash, but it also has Flash back, which means that you can summon it twice, once from your hand and then once again from your graveyard. I also like a nice, cheap, simple green like Fog, which is basically like a nice smoke bomb. If something's going wrong, you just 1 green mana, throw it down, all combat damage that turn is negated, and you have 1 more turn to kind of plan, just in case things go poorly. Now, most of the instants in this deck are going to be black, and I picked black because they have some really nice horror themes to them. So, for instance, Murder. Nice, super simple card. It just destroys a target creature. It only costs 3 mana, and this is kind of the archetype of classic black removal spell. The cards with like Corpse Lunge, which do also exactly what they say on the label. Basically, you take a card from your graveyard and you launch it at your opponent. Metaphorically. I also just really like it because it's got a picture of a corpse jumping out of a closet and scaring a guy, and is that not Amusement Park Haunted House? I also like some cards like Victim of Night, which does something very similar to Murder, but it only works on non-zombie, non-werewolf, non-vampire creatures. It is cheaper, but you are running the risk of running into one of those creatures, which means that you can't kill it. I really like the art because there's a guy who doesn't look at them. I also really like a card like Tragic Slip because there's nothing more inherently jump scary than the moment when you're falling asleep and then you're like, oh god, I'm falling, and then you bolt away. That's this, except it's a guy falling backwards into an open grave. And some classic black removal spells like Flesh Dust, just throw a couple in there just in case. I also highly recommend a card like Dark Ritual, which is a 1 black to summon instant, but it adds 3 black to your mana pool. It's nice because it means that for a turn you can have 3 hidden black mana in your hand, ready to go at any time. It means there's no way your opponent can know what you're about to do because he doesn't even know about these 3 mana. That's an entire other spell worth of mana that you can pull out at any time. So that's basically the deck. There are definitely other things you can do with it. I'd recommend looking through the Golgari set to find some nice stuff to bring creatures back from the graveyard, especially if you're going to be working with things like Ambush Viper that essentially sacrifice themselves when you use them. There's a link in the description to the tapped out page I made for this deck, so you can kind of look through it, see places where you can buy it, check out the mana distributions, play a couple fake hands, see kind of how it feels for you. If you think I could have done this deck better in a different way, feel free to tell me how in the comments. Gently, I have a fragile ego. If there's other things you'd like to see me try and build a deck based on, feel free to leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, all that nonsense. If you do happen to throw this deck together and play against somebody, let me know how it goes. I'd love to see how well constructed I was actually able to build a deck. See you guys next week.